Okay, well, good morning, everybody. I hope you're all well. We've just been having a quick chat about the weather, as we Brits well do. Um, so I've got only a few things to discuss this week, but first off, let me introduce my panel. We've got Liz. Hi, Liz.
Hi, everybody.
And we have Naomi. Hi, Naomi.
Hello, everyone.
I've tried to get Laura in, but I think she may still be locked out. So we're trying to figure out what's keeping Laura out of the system. It may be keeping other people out of the system as well. It's the peculiarities of Teams by the looks of it. Gareth is still in the US at the moment, and Jake has gone somewhere equally as glamorous. He's in Wolverhampton today. So it's just me and my panel.
And Kevin's not here.
And oh, sorry, and I forgot to mention Kevin. We have Kevin with us as well, of course.
Thank you.
I was going to rename these the Kevin Stewart Workshop. It's a sort of just to keep me on my toes. Right. Okay. I've really only got two main bits to cover off, and I've got a couple of conference questions. I did say I was going to start asking some questions, so we'll see whether I can possibly launch the question system. But apart from that, I want to talk or discuss with you the Ukraine hosted family scheme, because I think that's probably going to be quite significant for us and have wide-ranging implications. But first off, I'm going to go over to Kevin and for the council tax and business rates update. Kevin.
Okay, because I'm sure you'll want to talk about Ukraine quite a lot, so I'll try and be as quick as possible. Let's deal with business rates first. I'm sure most of you will be getting your business rates bills out, or if they haven't already landed. Obviously, the big issue there is any discounts and reliefs, etc., to award. And don't forget the cash caps on the leisure, hospitality and retail sector. It's £110,000. And there's four categories, estate agents, I think, letting agents and two others that I think are no longer qualify. So that's that. On the grants, the Omicron Hospitality, Retail Hospitality and Leisure Grant, or Hospitality and Leisure Grant, OHL, that's due to close at midnight on the 18th of March, this coming Friday. I'm sure you'll be up there waiting with your button to press the closure button on that. Everything needs to be done and dusted by the 31st of March. Any payments, everything else needs to be out of your bank account by the 31st of March. Additional restrictions grant, we're shutting that this particular week to time with the OHL grants. But once again, everything for that needs to be dealt with by the 31st of March as well. You've also got the CARF scheme, the COVID Additional Relief Fund. It'll be very interesting if there's any comments on who's done anything on that. We've been really low on applications made, and it would seem the agents don't really want to make applications on behalf. They're trying to find every way not to. But it's interesting to see in respect of that, and any feedback on what schemes you're doing, because they're very varied and across the board. Dealing with council tax, obviously bills have gone out, which is generating some inquiries. Our bills have landed, and a lot of inquiries, believe it or not, in relation to the energy payments. A Q&A is expected this week from Dulux. So obviously waiting to see what that says. I'm led to believe there's no major surprises in it. But it may well also have some reporting that's required, because yes, we'll have to do statistical side of things and everything from that particular point of view. So the energy payments, obviously waiting to do payments in April. Obviously the software companies are working hard to give us the power to do that. You've got the DDs, you've got also the non-DDs to do, although we're having quite an uptake on our DDs following saying that it'd be easier to pay the energy payments. And the other thing is your discretionary scheme. Obviously, you've got to draft and design a discretionary scheme. Dulux have kept that very vague, so it's entirely up to you. Although the leaflet mentions CTS cases for bands E to H, we can make £1,337.50 payments. We are trying to agree our scheme county-wide. Hopefully we're not far off doing that now, but apart from that, happy to take any questions, Malcolm.
Does anybody have any questions at all? And if you do, you can electronically raise your hand or just type them into the chat box. Kevin, do you think that the lack of uptake at the moment on the COVID stuff is because generally you get a sense that everybody thinks COVID has gone away?
Well, COVID officially has gone away because there's no restrictions anymore. Although I believe last week was the highest number of stats on people getting COVID that it has been for some time.
Yeah, I think they're stopping recording the stats today as well.
Yes. So, and don't forget, it's probably not the lead item on news these days. So there's not the pressure on it. Perhaps the Partygate will die a death as well. But yes, I think some companies have done very well. The schemes are very different, but it's not really a replacement like for MCC appeals for COVID. It means the agents have probably got to do a bit more work and probably work they're not probably fitted to doing. So, and the companies probably aren't prepared to do it themselves. So, it's interesting to see that the numbers are lower where we're making people apply, and I think some authorities take the attitude they'll award it and get them to make a statement, etc. The only problem is with that, how do you protect against fraud?
Yeah, right. Liz,
but it may be an avenue for us to take, of course.
Yes, absolutely. Liz, I know you're a keen listener to the Today programme.
I'm not.
I always thought you were.
Okay, so what are you going to confound me with now?
Well, it's just that I thought I heard this morning that they're going to start the booster programme again, starting with the over 70s, was it?
Oh, well, you're coming to me because you think I'm over 70, I see.
Well, I know you're not over 70.
Yeah, I have heard that as well. I did hear some very earnest people saying, you know, really, if you had your third booster a while ago, you probably need to have another one. But I haven't heard anything concrete. Will people bother? I mean, going back to your point about, you know, maybe it's wishful thinking, maybe there is too much going on elsewhere to worry about, cost of living, war, etc. Will people bother? I wonder.
I don't know. Naomi, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just I suppose thankful to Rebel Wilson about raising Partygate at the BAFTAs last night or the night before. Well done her. So it's not totally gone away. I think at the moment I'm just thinking, why us? Why are we all ending up doing everything? It just seems very chaotic. I do hope that people take up the offer of boosters. I know that, you know, the current virus circulating is not as wicked as earlier innovations of it, but if we're going to try and move on and make this more coronavirus more sort of business as usual, we do need to have those very vulnerable people be protected by boosters so that they can not become a second-class citizen and be worried about going out into the public domains.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chair, through you, could I just ask Naomi a question, please?
You can, yes.
Yeah, sorry, Naomi, put you on the spot. What do you mean by getting back to normal? And the other thing is, I suspect because of the increase in fuel costs that we'll probably get a further 150 or whatever payment to do later on in the year. So, and it will get thrown at revs and bends again. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I do think that there will be a recognition that the £150 is barely going to touch the sides.
Yeah.
And that there may be more money out there. And as always, you know, we've established that we're quite good at doing these things. So why would you not get us to do it again? I know that this is further down the agenda, but the Ukraine hosted families, £350.
Yeah.
Who do you think is going to end up paying that?
Yeah, absolutely, Naomi. Let's come to that in a minute. Let me get my 2 conference questions out of the way, and then we can spend the rest of the time, and I'll pick up on that question that you've just put as the starter, Naomi, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you all very much. I did say I was going to start to ask some questions, both through here and others. So I've got a couple of questions here, they're fairly quick. I'm just a bit curious about which conferences you're likely to attend in person, and will constrained budgets or workloads restrict your attendance to the way that you actually attend these conferences. So I'm going to have a go at running these polls. Just bear with me. I'm waiting for them to appear. I'm still waiting for them to appear. I should have pressed that button earlier, shouldn't I?
I take it your presenters are exempt from entering this as normal.
No, I think you are able to on
Right.
these ones. It was the old GoToWebinar that didn't let you do them. Actually, the polls have not appeared at all. So having spent the time to do them, they've not.
Malcolm, if the polls aren't coming out, might I suggest people put some comments in the notes, the chat?
Yeah, so that's a good idea, Kevin. Yeah, so fundamentally, if you could just put some notes in the comments and give us some idea of which conferences you're likely to attend. We've already decided at Team NetSol, but I'd be quite interested to.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
I don't know whether everybody's got it, but at the top of Teams, next to put up your hand and all the rest of it, there's a little button that says polls. If you press that, you will get the poll that you're talking about. I'm just about to reply to it.
I don't have it on mine. There's
Don't
one.
you?
There should be one from last year for Telford.
Well, there are 29 responses here, apparently, and you're saying that's from last year?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Just
I've
a
got 2
thought.
new polls which I just can't.
Well, it says, are you going to a conference this year?
Oh,
Yes,
well,
I'm going to Telford. Yes, I'm doing the virtual thing. No. So that's the old one. Okay,
yeah,
just
the
a
old
thought.
one. Yeah.
Pity.
So the options would be things like the SITFA conference, the housing conferences, the IRFO Spring and the Telford conferences. And also I'm a bit curious about whether you are going to attend in person or whether you're going to be attending as virtual delegates to hybrids. That'd be good. But I can see you're all putting them in, so that's absolutely brilliant. So in that case, let me move off the question so you can carry on answering that, and let's come to the Ukraine hosted families. I will get the hang of Teams eventually if they stop changing it. Right, so the Ukraine hosted families. Naomi, let's start with you. Your question was, who's going to be paying, or who's going to be doing the payments? And you think it's likely to be local authorities. Why do you think it's going to be local authorities?
Well, who else regularly pays out to large numbers of people, weekly, fortnightly, or weekly, even monthly, sums of money? It's probably us and DWP. I really don't see DWP jumping up and saying, pick me on this one. So I think it is probably local authorities. There's 2 payments. There's that £350 one, and then there's the 10,500, which has already been said is going to local authorities, but I would imagine that's going to counties and unitaries and that. I think there is a bit of a dread that the 350 will come down to districts.
Malcolm,
Joe
you've got
Hagger.
Joe Hagger.
Yeah, Joe Hagger. Do you want to come in?
Yeah, it was just a quickie. Sorry, because I've got to shoot off to another meeting in a minute. But on the news this morning, they were saying that if, say, like a single person takes a Ukrainian family or whatever, they will keep their single person discount. So to me, that sounds more like it's going to fall on us to pay this out, because if we're going to have to monitor the fact of making sure people keep their single person discounts, it's going to end up with us, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think because I mean, I expect they're probably hoping that a lot of older people who are living alone, who've got the space, could be encouraged to.
Well, Malcolm, it's not as if we've got anything else to do.
Right. Okay. So, we kind of flattened the mood there, and it's coming our way, and I think it probably is.
Isn't the minister, Malcolm, meant to be giving a presentation or a speech in Parliament this afternoon about it?
Yeah. So let me just ask about that. I mean, from our experience, whatever is announced this afternoon is probably not going to answer huge numbers of questions, but probably going to create some. Is that what you think, Kevin?
Yes, I do think that they tend to be a government that puts out information beforehand to see what the reaction is, announces it based on that, and then when you get the guidelines for 3 weeks later, it's completely changed from what it was or what you thought it was. So just read into that, but I'm of the same opinion. It will come our way.
And Liz, I mean, will this affect things like housing benefit, and how do you think it would affect housing benefit?
I think it says a lot that this has been passed over to, as Kevin calls them, Dulux, under communities. I think that's significant. I think that says a lot about who's going to be dealing with this. I also think there are some considerations. I mean, this £350 a month goes to the host families, the people hosting it. How's it going to be treated? Is it going to be treated as income? It's paid regularly, for, if not for benefit purposes, for tax purposes. Again, I mean, I haven't heard the bit about single person discounts not being affected by it.
I have heard that bit.
You have? Yeah, it's all so up in the air. I mean, it's exactly, I mean, they seem to be saying this is the first time we've done anything like this, but I sort of recall we did something similar. They tried to do for Syria, the Syrian refugees, and that was a nightmare. I mean, there's so much that they haven't considered. I mean, when he talks about public services, you know, you've got language difficulties. I mean, the idea, are these houses, these people, the hosts suitable to take in, you know, refugees? Will they be able to cope? What happens if they can't cope?
Yeah, and the question is the numbers as well, because obviously if there's a large increase in numbers, it's become more of an issue.
As I understand it, I mean, they can claim benefits, can't they? And not that I suggest that's the idea, but I noticed that Gove particularly has been very hesitant to say that is the case. He talks about, we will do everything we can to find people work, and I'm sure most refugees would want to work, but there is still the benefit consideration. You know, if you take in that they can claim benefit, but not housing costs.
They'll have recourse to public funds. Yeah, I think another concern that I have is whether the properties they're going into are suitable. We've got enough issues at the moment with people living in terrible substandard accommodation, and the temptation that some scrupulous landlords to, you know, just cram in as many people as possible.
There's also other considerations. I mean, for instance, people may be willing to or want to do it, but their mortgage terms and conditions may not allow them to do that. They may be precluded from any of those things from taking in refugees or anybody for that matter.
But
There's
can you
also
see?
quite a few tenancy considerations to take into account.
But can you see mortgage companies coming back and saying no, they shouldn't, because they wouldn't want that bad publicity, would they?
No, I can't. But it's just, it's a consideration, isn't it? It's just an example of, the ramifications of this. It's not just a case of saying, well, okay, to get us out of our difficulty over the fact that we have been completely restrictive and bureaucratic about letting people in, we're now saying that basically the public can help in this and take people into their homes. But it's so flimsy.
Kevin,
well, we won't know until the guidance is out, will we? Exactly what it does do. And the other thing is, are the tax implications from the payments? Because you can take a lodger in for a certain amount, but I think 350 goes over the tax implication limit.
No, it doesn't. The rent-a-room scheme is £7,500.
So it's probably under that then.
Yeah. So it is. I think it's something like 625 a month. So
yeah,
you can offer one person, but if you have two, then it will take you over that.
Yeah. So is it a straight 350 payment, or is it a 350 payment per person?
I think it's 350 per. That's it, straight 350, not per person. But I could be wrong. This is the whole point. It's just, it's what you were saying earlier, Kevin. All this comes out without, and it's only later that, of course, when things are published in detail, that it makes it clear and difficult.
It looks like the males have mainly been kept in the country in Ukraine, so it's probably going to be families and either the elderly, so people probably who are more inclined to be looking for benefit help.
Yeah.
So fundamentally, this £350 per month, I understood, was per family. So there'll be all the definitions of a family. Will it affect things like where you've got a bedroom reduction on? Will that change things?
Oh, that's the thing. Will it impact upon your benefits from the restrictions? There's a whole set of ramifications that people probably haven't thought of.
You think?
Okay, and Lynn, do you want to come in? You're asking a question there.
Yeah, I was just sort of thinking about the SPD. If that's going to still be applied, then it seems logical that the 350 income will be disregarded for benefit purposes. And I also reckon, just what you've mentioned, Malcolm, I think things will logically follow, like the the restricted rooms. And like the guidance, like with COVID, landlords weren't allowed to evict. So I think it will follow that there'll be, what Liz raised about the mortgages and the banks and everything, saying that you can't have anybody else living with you. It just seems logical to me that it's going to be very much like that because it's such a unique situation.
Yeah.
Do you think that laws will be lifted as these?
Can I just make one comment, Malcolm? Because on benefits, I agree with Lynn, that will probably happen in a roundabout way because it's happened with the other things as well, and it is such a thing. But council tax support scheme for working age is generally set every year by the authorities.
Yeah.
Now, some authorities can't change those schemes now, and the powers gives them no power to disregard the £350 within their current schemes. So what's going to happen with that? Because Dulux won't let them change their schemes in year.
Well, they might say that it's a local welfare provision payment.
They may do, yes.
That is the only way they can get round that.
Yes. Yeah, but you see my point.
Oh no, I do, but I think that. I don't think they've thought of it, but I think if somebody raises it, that somebody who knows a little bit more will say, well, that's okay because you can do local welfare payment, which is what they've done for the £150 anyway.
Yeah.
I guess probably the numbers is another question that I have. I mean, so far 3,000 visas have been granted through the first scheme to allow Ukrainians to apply for a family visa to join family members already here. But we are expecting the numbers to increase quite considerably Are we for the new scheme?
Yeah, I think it will open up quite a serious number of applications.
In a way that previous schemes haven't.
Yes.
Because this is much closer to home.
Yeah, I think that there will be a greater take up from members of the public who have really seen this as a more of an on your doorstep European issue against a known enemy.
Mm.
I'm not saying that's right, but I think that's, you know, what some people are hinting at.
Yeah, absolutely. Bob, can I ask you, because your neck of the woods has already got problems, or had problems, hasn't it, with refugees in the area? Is it likely to be seen as something that you're going to see an influx in Boston?
I'm sure we will. I don't think we've got an issue with refugees. We've got an issue with migrants.
Yes,
yes.
Yeah,
I don't think they're refugees as such. I know there were some Afghanistanis put into Skegness, but they were very small numbers. But there is a large Ukrainian and Russian community in Boston, and I'm sure they're going to be trying to get people across and into the areas. And just as an aside, one of the things Kevin mentioned about CTR schemes, we changed all our CTR schemes this year to give Section 151 officer power to disregard any new income types, because we just thought there were going to be more that we hadn't heard of, so we put it in. So we didn't actually have to change our scheme to account for the £150 energy rebate, because our scheme already disregarded it before it was announced, and it will this one as well.
Yeah, Bob, we've already done that from April 2020. I just raised the point because I think that's an absolute must for future schemes, because so much is happening during the year.
But I suspect we will find a lot of people, because a lot of people will know Ukrainians, and they will, I'm sure, a lot of them will be coming here because there is already a large Ukrainian community here. And so I suspect we will see a lot. But we have because we have a problem with migrants, we have a problem with housing multiple occupation anyway. That there are significant parts of the town in Boston that are just high-mo streets, with landlords who aren't desperately eager to keep their accommodation up to standard. And in fact, the Borough Council prosecuted one a few years ago who just happened to be the deputy leader of the council and finance portfolio holder. But that's another story.
Okay, I'm just going to raise a question.
Malcolm, there's a question there. There's a comment there from Gary Lezelle.
Yeah, I'm just going to come to Andy first, and then I'm going to come to Gary, if that's okay. Andy Sims, you're on the other side of the Humber there from Bob. Are you going to experience similar things, do you think, in Hull?
Hi, Malcolm. Yeah, possibly. There's a meeting being set up for later this week by our housing teams to start exploring some of these. So it's interesting, some of the things that have been raised on the call, because I think, for instance, the £350 payment very likely to wing its way over to local authorities, although whether it will be distributed by revenues and benefits, not too sure, because some of the other funds that we've had have been distributed by colleagues in housing, etc. We've got quite diverse communities. I think we will experience some problems, or some challenges, although not as much as maybe some colleagues from elsewhere that have been talking. But I'm sure everywhere we'll see some level of work through this.
Okay, and Gary, you were raising a point.
Yeah, so I was just saying, if DWP choose to disregard it in universal credit, then obviously it won't show as an income. So just by default, it won't affect a large number of authorities' CTS schemes. But obviously, if the customer's not on UC in very similar circumstances, then if we can't disregard it under local welfare provision, then it will count. So there's a big inequality issue potentially arising. But I know that some LAs took the approach when the £20 come out, it was too late for them to change their schemes. But now they continue to disregard in for the sort of the non-UC customers in their for working tax credits. So are they likely to take the same approach, and who's going to challenge them? So even though it might not be within the rules, who is going to challenge something of that nature?
That is a fair point. I think if it's something in the customer's favour, I don't think it is going to be challenged, but it doesn't rule out the fact it can be.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the tricky bit, isn't it, about things that can be. I mean, it all changes when public sensibilities change, of course, you know when
so
all
that does come down to your view on risk, and what would the likely punishment be if somebody did actually challenge it. What would be the outcome?
Lynn's got her hand up, by the way, Malcolm.
Yeah, okay, Lynn, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I was just thinking what Gary was saying, you know, and what all of you have said really, but I don't. The reason I think it will be completely disregarded for every single thing that you can imagine it would impact on is because obviously the government want to encourage people to do this, and you know, unless they make it simple, you know, you don't want to have to think. You know, you may have the best will in the world to say that you've got a spare room and you're happy to do this because of the situation, but if you start to think about how it could impact you, you know, the fact that, you know, you might well be on benefits, you might be a very you know, in poverty person or whatever else, but the fact is that I cannot see that the government would have any intention to make it difficult for people to make the decision to take a family in.
And do you think that people who will take families in may well come from those people who are on low incomes? Because you quite often see a generosity of spirit from those who can least afford it.
Yeah. I mean, if they've got spare rooms, and as you say, somebody said it earlier about the single, I think it was you, Malcolm, about the bedroom restrictions, then, you know, you're in a win-win. They're not going to say, right, you know, if you've got no more bedroom restriction because you've got a family in, that makes sense because that's what the government encourage you to do. So if you have your bedroom restriction removed, you've then got the £350, which obviously is to help towards extra heating, maybe even extra food, you know, whatever it's intended for. You know, yes, I do think low income families will take it up if they've got the capacity to do so.
And I guess probably one other question I've got is, it's about, I mean, there's clearly a large disconnect between jobs at the moment. You know, there are a lot of jobs available. Are we expecting that this will address some of those issues about finding people to fill the posts that are around? I've heard many Ukrainians say they're prepared to do absolutely anything, and we know Eastern Europeans do have that strong work ethic. Do we think that will affect those job numbers, Kevin?
I honestly don't know, because no one knows the numbers involved. So, because at the moment they've made life very difficult for people to get things. If you look at the numbers going into other countries, so until you find out if it's going to increase any great numbers, you just don't know, do you?
No.
There's a lot of known unknowns and there's a lot of unknown unknowns, I would suggest.
Isn't this the irony that we shut the door to many Eastern Europeans with Brexit? And it takes a shocking situation in Eastern Europe when we were all told, you know, people are taking our jobs, but it's clear that we can't get people into all the jobs that we need. Anyway, I think I ought to stop there.
Yeah, we may end up wandering into a conversation about Brexit. Okay, so as time is tracking on, let me ask one other question, which is the Resolution Foundation had published their cost of living report. We'll probably discuss that report next week. But I did pick out the one figure that I thought was a real headline in that, which is their initial estimate is the conflict in the Ukraine might push peak inflation in 2022-23 above 8%. They're suggesting that for a typical real household income for non-pensioners, probably it's going to sit at about 4%, about £1,000 a year, which would be about 4% or £1,000 a year lower than it was in the previous year. So is this just going to exacerbate the problems? How is this going to sort of impact on the services that we run? Liz, I mean, you can speak to this from both a sort of local authority point of view and a housing point of view.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's all pretty awful news, isn't it? Really. I mean, so the thing. What about the fact that if rents go up, we haven't talked about the fact that inflation will have an effect on rents. If rents go up, it's going to mean there are people who can't afford to live on their own personal way, but can't afford to pay their rent either. Is it? Sorry, Malcolm, I've sort of half lost your thread. You were talking about pensioners, weren't you?
No, I was talking about the typical real household income for non-pensioners. I think it's going to be about 4% less.
Malcolm, I think the cost of living will increase greatly as opposed to the cost of wage increases. You only have to look at the cost of petrol. That'll soon be £2 per litre.
Well, it is in some places, isn't it?
Well,
already?
It is, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when petrol gets to that kind of level of price, that creates a disproportionate impact as well. I mean, especially if you've got Ukrainian refugees coming in, the cost of transport is going to be too expensive. So, and some people on low incomes, if the price of petrol goes up, the car may be the only way that they can get from a rural area into work.
Yeah, that's an element on the vulnerable people, because financially you'll have more and more people become vulnerable as the prices go up.
I think you're talking there about the whole cost of travelling. I mean, the cost of travelling has risen beyond inflation whenever they did it, which is now beyond whatever. So, I mean, it's almost impossible to travel. But what happens if people who are generally taking, I don't say advantage, but they're taking advantage of the fact that they can work from home? That generally requires them to be up to speed with their internet provider, their electrical costs, everything. Now, what happens if people can't afford to do that? You can find that people will actually not be able to work, literally. They can't afford to travel into work, and they can't afford to work from home because actually they've lost their internet provision. I mean, it could just go on and on and on.
Yes, yes. And internet provision is going to be important for any family that take in Ukrainian refugees as well, because they will require the internet in order to make contact with family still in the Ukraine.
Yes, free Wi-Fi isn't beginning to look like a bad thing, wasn't that, Corbyn?
Yeah. That's true.
Well, if you want the country to work, it's about productivity, isn't it? All these things are colliding to mean a mass of difficulties in society and also in prosperity.
True.
I'm really depressed.
Yes, I was going to say we've got to finish another session with us all feeling very.
Malcolm, just a couple of comments in here. And I'm not sure how many of our audience do, but the boosters, I'm excluding you, Malcolm. The booster is for anyone 75 and over. So just not quite on the right edge of that yet. And Bob Wagstaff has made.
Away there.
Well, I'm sure you've got many a year to go yet. But let's hope that the government, Bob Wagstaff, let's hope the government runs out of fag packets to write the ideas on sometime soon. I do agree with Bob, but the trouble is, Bob, those fag packets seem to be coming always towards local government. So I suspect you've got more work to come on the back of the fag packet.
BAT often contribute towards the Conservative Party? British American Tobacco? Sorry.
Probably.
Yeah.
I feel a theme coming from you there, Naomi.
And on that point, Malcolm.
Yeah, I think on that point, I'm going to thank everybody for their contributions today. My panel, Liz, Naomi, Kevin, and also the rest of you, Bob, Lynn, and Joe, Andy, and Gary. Hopefully, I've mentioned you all, and we'll see you again.
Jake too.
And Jake too. Yes, and I was just about to thank Kevin for not only being a panelist but also marshalling for me as well. And I thank you all very much, and I shall see you all next week, where I'm sure we'll have much more to talk about next week. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Cheers all.
Bye.
Bye.
Great week.
Thank you.